going in. Uh, Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Now we're going to be practicing the Anapanasati, so try to sit straight and focus your attention on the breathing going in and out of the nostrils, or you can feel the expanding and contracting of the abdomen, rib cage, your chest, wherever you feel the breathing most easiest. Just close the eyes, and on the incoming breath, just recite the syllable Bud on the in-breath and Do on the out-breath. The in-breath Bud, the out-breath Do. Just try to combine the breathing with the word Buddho as your concentration. Breathing in Bud, out breath Do. Just continue that on your own for a few minutes. get lost in thoughts, just keep coming back to the breathing. Bud, do. I'll turn it back over to you, Geshe, for continuation of the program.
Thank you so much, Bande Raula. So today we have two guest speakers, Venerable Kundagamana Shila Ratana Thero and Venerable Ani Tendula. So thank you very much for accepting our request. And I'm going to invite first Venerable Shila Ratana Thero to talk to us. So I forget to ask you, please, Bande, and introduce briefly by yourself. Thank you.
Bante Rahul and Bante Kamalasiri. I think we all know each other except 2 or 3 of you. I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Originally, I am from Sri Lanka. I came here in 2003 after my education and after working as a school teacher for a while in Sri Lanka. First, I came to New York, then to Chicago. From Chicago I moved to Milwaukee, 1.5 hours north from Chicago. Now I am living here about 12, 13 years. Now I am working as a hospital chaplain at Fred Hospital in Milwaukee. Today Bhante Sudhara asked me to speak about the Buddha from the renunciation to the enlightenment. This is the first time I am doing this kind of talk, and there might be some difficult. If there would be any difficulty for you to understand what I am telling, please forgive me. I could not refuse when Venerable Sudhara was asking me to do this. We know each other more than 40 years, I think. In the oldest one I know from you is Bhante Rahul. First I met him when he was first in Sri Lanka, and the Venerable Sudhara is maybe the next one. You know that the story until the renunciation, the last days of the Buddha's life as Prince Siddhartha, as the Buddha reported in one of the discourses in Sutta Nipata. In the discourse, one who has taken up the road, the Buddha described how contemporary society scared him. He says, fear has arisen from one who has taken up the road. See the people engaged in strife. I will tell you of my sense of urgency, how I was stirred by a sense of urgency. Having seen the population trembling like fish in a pool with little water. I am sure everyone who had been in Sri Lanka have seen how fish in little water. Having seen them hostile to one another, fear came upon me. Those are the Buddha's words. This fear, this anguish had persuaded him to think about when a solution can be found to this mass of suffering. It was the first kind of common suffering he had experienced. Seeing people who are fighting with each other, I am sure it is the same we all are experiencing, seeing today all over the world. Then he says, the question occurred in his head when he can find an answer to this mass of suffering. He knew that at his palace life, he could not find a solution. There was also in the political world, within the palace premise, there was the same kind of strife, troubles among people. Then he had been looking for. You all know that his teachers, first teachers were as a prince, teachers were Brahmins. I think that he was, Prince Siddhartha was much familiar about the Brahmana tradition, the way they had been living, they had been seeing the world. Once he had seen an ascetic. It is describing in one of the 10 discourses in Samyutta Nikaya, Nidana Vagga. There are 10 discourses in same words describing the same thing, that had experienced by different Buddhas before the Shakyamuni Buddha. There the Buddha describes that Buddha Vipassi had seen 4 different kinds of signs, 4 different states, 3 different kinds of states in life, and an ascetic or someone ordained to find a solution, find an answer, who was trying to find an answer to the question of suffering. We who are following the Pali tradition also believe the Shakyamuni Buddha had also seen the same 4 of them. Old one, someone who had been sick, a dead body, and someone who had been ordained. But in Pali scriptures, we can find Shakyamuni Buddha describing it was something had seen by the Buddha Vipassi. On that day that the Buddha Vipassi had been seen before the enlightenment, seeing those 4 signs on 4 different days, on the date when he saw the monk or someone ordained, maybe an ascetic, he asked from his driver who was that, and learned from him he was someone who was looking for an answer to the question of suffering in life. Then he decided to follow his path and to be someone who was searching an answer to the question of suffering. Shakyamuni Buddha had also been doing the same thing. As an ascetic, he turned himself into an ascetic to find an answer to the question when one can find an answer to the question of suffering. Then what he had done was, he had gone to 2 different ascetic teachers at the time. First one was Alara Kalam, as traditionally describing in different books. We learned that it had been nearly 6-hour period of search, turning himself as an ascetic. He investigated, he went from one teacher to the other, learning that tradition that had been new to him. Under the guidance of Alarakalama, he practiced, followed his directions, and accomplished what he had accomplished. As it is describing later, later he had achieved Akincha Nyayatana, or the third formless jhana, following the directions of his first teacher, Alarakalam. You all know these are the higher stages of the cultivation of mind, development of mind. Anybody who likes to enjoy or experience the bliss of the jhana, he can enter to the jhana to any time he wished, and after that period of time, he would have to come back to his day-to-day life. As Alarakalama was enjoying or experiencing the bliss of jhana, he appreciated ascetic Gautama to stay with him, share his group of students, and to lead the group as like as he had been. But ascetic Gautama did not like it. It was not his quest. He wanted to find an answer to the question of suffering he had experienced from the common society at the time. Then what happened was, he left that group looking for someone else who would know something different, because he did not need a temporary kind of solution. He needed some kind of an eternal solution to the question he was experiencing. Then what happened was, he met another famous teacher at the time, whose name was Uddaka Ramaputta. Then he started to train himself under the guidance of the teacher Uddaka Ramaputta. His directions helped ascetic Gautama to achieve the fourth formless jhana called Nevasanya Nasanyayatana. Neither perception nor non-perception. It is the last or the fourth stage of the development of mind. Most of the ascetics at the time had accomplished. It was something advanced than the absorption or the stage his first teacher had achieved, but not the solution ascetic Gautama had been looking for. Here we should remember that, as Pali scriptures describe, the most important one is the noble quest, Arya Pariyesana Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, 26th discourse in Majjhima Nikaya. In Arya Pariyesana Sutta, Buddha described all those things happen at the prime age of his life, when he had black hair, when his parents and closest ones of his life had been lamenting, crying, doing everything possible to obstruct, to stop his renunciation. Then I think that ascetic Siddhartha or the Gautama could afford, could tolerate whatever the difficulties he had been undergoing during this period of time. Following Udakarama Putta, he achieved the Nevasanya Nasanyayatana, or neither perception nor non-perception, the last formless jhana. He experienced what he achieved and found it is something advanced than what his previous teacher had achieved, but it was also not the final solution he was looking for. He needed some kind of an eternal solution to the question of suffering in life. Then he decided to change his direction towards himself without following the directions of any teacher. He started being isolated from the common society. He went into the forest and describes in the discourse Arya Pariyasana Sutta how he had been walking into the deeper areas of the forest where he could not find any human being. He described he had seen sometimes young people who had come to the forest with their herds of cattle. When he was seeing them, he had afraid or did everything possible to escape, to stay hidden, stay out of the eyes of the sight of the other people, being secluded in the forest. He had been investigating himself to find an answer to second question occurred in his head. As described in the Sutta, Gautama Sutta in Samyutta Nikaya Nidana Vagga, the second question had been how one can find an answer to the question of suffering. The first one was when someone could find an answer. Second one had been how one can find an answer to the question of suffering. The way to find an answer to the question of suffering. Then he started investigating himself, beginning from establishing the mindfulness as we all are studying, practicing, describing today, given in the famous discourse of 4 bases of mindfulness. Just sit somewhere comfortably, as it had described in the discourse. He investigated himself, beginning from the breath. There he found everything is because of something else. Each in-breath is because of the previous out-breath. Each out-breath is because of the previous in-breath. Then he applied that experience to his investigation of what to find an answer to the question, what is there before we experience suffering? What brings suffering into our life? Then what happened was he learned, he realized suffering is something we made individually in our mind, in our head. Then he started to learn what are the different facts, information we are using to make suffering. There he found it is the kind of very old fermenting mental state, kind of states in our mind called taints. There are 3 different kinds of taints describing in the second discourse of Majjhima Nikaya, middle length sayings. Kamasava, Bhavasava, and Avijjasava. Taint of sensual desire, taint of being, taint of delusion. Actually, taint is that everybody you know that who is from the Eastern world, in Ayurvedic dispensaries where we can get different treatments, they sell or they provide us asava. Asava is a kind of especially brewed or made medicine, fermenting for sometimes for months, for years in somewhere. They ferment different kinds of medicinal herbs, flowers, and stuff for several months and made asava. Ascetic Siddhartha had also experienced we have asava in our mind. Fermenting mental states or thoughts in our heads, in our minds, sometimes over many different births. They are the ones who make us, persuading us to fight, to compete, to different kinds of steps in the life. Then he started investigating them and removing them from his own mind. The accomplishment he achieved in this exercise of understanding, identifying, understanding, and removing taints is called Asavakkaya Jnana, the knowledge of removing taints. It was something different from what he had experienced from his previous teachers. It was unique to him. It was not something any of the other traditional ascetics had or Brahmins had experienced. With the support of Asavakkaya Jnana, he could eliminate all the three different kinds of taints from his mind. Then he made himself clean in mind or pure in mind and made a special proclamation after achieving the Asavakkaya Jnana. It is describing in Dhammapada. Over the numerous of lives in the cyclical existence, Aneka Jati Sansarang. I chased behind the one who builds the life. I found him because repetitive appearance in life is suffering. I saw the one, he cannot build the house for me again. I broke his rafters and dispersed his ridgepole. The mind that entered to the state of not forming any became free of desire. Cleansing his mind from all the taints, he found the mechanism that was making different desires in the mind, which are persuading us to do this and that, numerous of things in life. Finally, he stopped that mechanism, the way of producing different desires in the mind. Then he said Tannanang Kaya Majjaga, he became himself who was free from all the kinds of desires. That is what we are learning, accepting, learning, and paying our homage as the Buddhahood or the enlightenment or the emancipation of the emancipation that was introduced by the Buddha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bande Shilaratna Thero. So I'm going to invite Venerable Nan Lobsang Tendrila. Please welcome.
Thank you, Geshe Darge, and all of the most venerable monks who are here. My name is Losang Tendril. I'm one of Geshe Darge's students here in Connecticut. I am actually Chinese American from New York City, so my background is quite different probably from yours. I took ordination late in life, not until 2008, and then had lots of time to try to catch up, and did a lot of studying with Gyalme Khenchen Rinpoche Losang Jampa, and of course, many online courses. So to keep going here, I am going to talk about the same topic, the Buddha's life story from his renunciation to enlightenment. The source that I'm using is the Play in Full Sutra. This is the same sutra, or one of the sutras that the previous speaker, Venerable Losang Dunya, used. in his presentation last month. And so what I'm going to be doing is going through the sutra and picking some of the highlights. I'm also trying to celebrate the beauty of this particular sutra. So since I'm from New York City, I tend to speak really fast. I apologize. When the Buddha was born, it was prophesied that he would either become a universal monarch or leave home if he was confronted with the miseries of the world. So when he did come into contact with old age, sickness, and death, he developed renunciation, decided he had to leave home to seek liberation. So I'm going to refer to Prince Siddhartha as the Bodhisattva, since that's the way he's referred to in this particular sutra. It's a Mahayana sutra. So the Bodhisattva had already turned away from sensual pleasures, such as the temptations of the beautiful palace women, and he had rejected his own handsome physical body as being the basis of suffering. And then while he was looking at the sleeping palace women, he was deeply moved by compassion as he saw them lying there. And he made the firm resolution to attain enlightenment for all beings. So the sutra says, these childish beings are controlled like elephants by the Mahut's hook. These childish beings are deceived like a simple-minded person by a charlatan. These childish beings exhaust their roots of virtue like a gambler losing his wealth. That's actually an excerpt from a very long, beautiful description. So with tears in his eyes, his servant Chanda tried to dissuade the Bodhisattva, saying he had the best worldly pleasures and would not find happiness elsewhere. And he said, you know the techniques of enjoyment, so relish them, like the powerful lords of gods in the heaven of the 33. Later, when we are old, we can practice disciplined conduct and austerities. That kind of sounds familiar, right? Kind of rings a bell. But the Bodhisattva had completely understood the faults of impermanence and desire. And he replied, enough, Chanda. These sense pleasures are impermanent and unstable. They do not endure and are subject to change. Like the rapids of a mountain torrent, they quickly pass and are turbulent. Like dewdrops, they do not last. Like an empty fist that tricks a child, they have no substance. Like a vessel filled with poison, they cause pain. So then he restated his resolve, and he explained how he had already experienced all possible worldly pleasures for many, many eons, but he was still not satisfied. And due to not knowing the Dharma, his mind was deluded by self-grasping ignorance. He had to pursue his own spiritual path. So the Bodhisattva was assisted by countless gods and bodhisattvas and other beings throughout his journey. And even the great Brahma and Shakra, they all supported him. And when they realized that the Bodhisattva was about to leave the palace, they wondered how to help him. And the god Lalita Vayua offered, I will silence all sounds from horses, elephants, donkeys, camels, cows, buffaloes, women, men, boys, and girls. And then the Lord Chakra, the Lord of the gods himself said, I will open the gates and show him the path. So at that moment, the Bodhisattva realized that everyone in the city was sound asleep and that the hour of midnight had come and the moon was in the constellation of Pusya. And he was aware that the time had come for him to leave. So he told his servant, Chanda, don't badger me now. Instead, without any further delay, bring me my horse Kantaka, well adorned. And then he restated his vow. He vowed not to return home until he had attained the precious awakening. So they proceed and leave the palace, in the middle of the night. And after going some distance, he asked Chanda to return to the palace, right? And he continued on his journey into the forest all alone. And the sutra says, he adopted the lifestyle of a renunciate in order to act in agreement with the perception of worldly people, and because he felt compassion for others. So this was a conscious choice as to how he decided to follow his path. Right? So he goes on to Vaisali, where he studied with the teacher, Arada Kalama. He successfully mastered his training, but then left because he realized that that approach did not bring the total freedom from suffering that he sought. From Vaisali, he moved on to Rajagriha. He stayed on the slope of Mount Pandava, where he was protected by many trillions of gods. Due to his splendid appearance, everyone wondered who he was. And eventually King Bimbisara heard about him and invited him to stay, and again offered him half his kingdom and tempted him with all varieties of sensual pleasures. But the Bodhisattva was not dissuaded from his path and taught him, explained that the craving for sensual pleasure can never be satisfied. For someone who holds the Dharma, however, desirable objects have no attraction. So then the Bodhisattva became a student of another popular teacher, Rudraka, the son of Rama. And he did so in order to try to lead him to renounce, and here's a quote from the sutra again, renounce his concentration, absorption, and states of equilibrium, saying that they are fabricated, defiled, and perpetuating. So the Bodhisattva, just as in the previous experience with the other teacher, was immediately able to attain Rudraka's way of equilibrium due to his mastery of the absorptions and his collection of merit and wisdom. And having done so successfully, he decided to leave Rudraka as well. And 5 of Rudraka's students decided to follow the Bodhisattva because they were impressed by how quickly he had realized Rudraka's methods, and thinking that he must be searching for something even better. So at that time, there were many other ascetics practicing their own forms of austere spiritual discipline. And the sutra describes, a few of them. And a short excerpt from one of the many verses I thought was really interesting. He said, it goes, some sleep on a stool or in the water, while others sleep in ashes, on rocks, gravel, planks, thorns, grass, or sticks. Others sleep with their heads towards the ground in squatting posture or on the bare ground. There are some who wear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or more pieces of clothing, while others go naked. There are also some who subsist on just a single juniper berry, sesame seed, or grain of rice. So, why do the ascetics engage in such austerities? Right? That's the question. And the sutra explains, this is what these extremists rely on because of their fear of cyclic existence. In doing so, some of them think, because of these methods, in the afterlife, we shall find heaven and final emancipation after death. So the motivation was more in terms of their own personal liberation. Right? So it was in this context that the Bodhisattva engaged in 6 years of intensely difficult practice that was so difficult that the sutra says, except for a Bodhisattva who had reached his last existence and rests in equanimity in the all-pervasive absorption, there is no one, human or non-human, capable of undergoing such hardships. So we could ask ourselves, why did the Bodhisattva engage in such intensely difficult practices? He did so in order to overcome others' wrong views, to shatter the pride of the extremists, and to show the results of the collection of merit and wisdom. So as he practiced the all-pervading absorption, there was an intense, loud, ringing noise in his ears and a very sharp pain in his skull with each breath that he took. It felt like a spear was being shoved into his skull. And there's a long description of his suffering. So nevertheless, he decides to eat only a single juniper berry, like some of the other ascetics. At that point, he was so weak, he couldn't walk. His skin turned black, his hair fell out. And he persisted and decided not to eat anything at all. So while he was meditating, the Bodhisattva was tormented by the local villagers. It wasn't as though he was in a very isolated location at this point. They stuck things in his ears, in his mouth, they kicked dust at him. But as a result of his hardships, his tremendous suffering, 1,200 billion gods and humans were matured in the 3 vehicles. So he's meditating at the, and remembered, that he'd already attained the 4th level of concentration, when he was at the palace. And he was convinced that that was the correct path to awakening. But he also realized that he wasn't going to be able to succeed, in his weakened physical condition. He also knew that he could attain the path through his supernatural knowledge alone, but recognized that future beings, and here's a quote, future beings would not be disposed favorably toward me, and this path would not lead to awakening, because he realized that others would find it difficult to follow such extreme practices. And interestingly, he also rejected an offer to be fed by the gods through the pores of his body, kind of like intravenously, I guess, thinking that that would be hypocritical. So after careful consideration, he decided to resume eating, at which point his 5 ascetic companions gave up on him, decided to go on to Varanasi. So the young woman Sujata had made fervent aspirational prayers to be able to offer food to the Bodhisattva. And so it was she who offered him his first meal. And the Bodhisattva was surrounded and venerated by countless gods. And while he ate, and he bathed, and he threw his bowl away into the river and received the clothing of a monk. So each location where these specific activities took place and all of the objects, was carefully memorialized. So then he's approaching the seat of awakening. And there's a very inspiring, beautiful description of the Bodhisattva's stride as he's walking to the seat of awakening that summarizes all of his qualities. So this is a short excerpt from the description in the sutra. His stride was that of the single lord of the great trichiliocosm, the spontaneous stride that cannot be overpowered, the stride that actualizes the attainment of omniscient wisdom, the stride of mindfulness and insight, and the stride that leads to a happy rebirth, the stride that pacifies old age and death. There's also a beautiful detailed description of the environment, the surroundings, as he's walking to the seat of an awakening, the road, the millions of decorated palm trees and countless divine offerings. And the great Brahma even offers extensive praise of the Bodhisattva. As the Bodhisattva approached the tree, the physical and mental sufferings of all sentient beings instantly vanished. At that moment, all sentient beings were relieved of the harms inflicted by attachment, anger, ignorance, wrath, greed, cruelty, ill will, envy, and jealousy. At that moment, no one experienced dying, moving to the next life, and taking birth. At that moment, everyone engendered love, altruism, and a feeling that all beings are each other's mothers and fathers. So all of that happened just as the Bodhisattva was approaching the Bodhi tree, right? He was just walking there. The sutra also mentions the connection between Bodhisattva and the Buddhas who preceded him in a couple of examples. For example, in one instance, the Bodhisattva asks himself, he says, where did the previous thus gone ones sit when they attained the unsurpassed, genuine, and perfect awakening? Oh, they sat on a bed of grass. And this was instantly confirmed by hundreds of thousands of gods from the pure realm. They said, yeah, bed of seat of grass. And when the Bodhisattva spoke, right, I think people, we've heard this before, but it's so beautifully described here. He spoke with a single voice, yet was heard in all languages. His voice caused all meanings to be known, produced all types of happiness, demonstrated the path to liberation, proclaimed all the accumulations necessary for the path, and conformed with the teachings of all Buddhas. So with this beautiful voice, he asked the grass seller, Svastika, for grass to use as a seat. And Svastika asked him to wait. He said, I myself shall awaken first to the supreme state of immortality. And so the Bodhisattva responded that without practicing disciplined conduct and austerities for many eons, you will not attain awakening simply by sitting on a seat of fine grass. And then he said, Svastika, if it were possible to hand awakening to another being by making awakening into a lump of alms food, I would surely grant this to everyone. I think that's also a very famous saying. So at that point, the gods and bodhisattvas realized that the bodhisattva would attain awakening under the Bodhi tree. So they decorated another 80,000 Bodhi trees that were all extremely tall and different, incredibly different, different sizes. And they were all made of different kinds of jewels. They each created a jeweled throne at the base of the tree. And then the bodhisattva emanated an identical bodhisattva on each of the thrones, so that they all saw him, they each saw him resting in equilibrium upon their particular lion throne and not on those set forth by the others. That's how kind he was, how considerate he was. Okay, so I'm almost done. At that point, the bodhisattva could, through his power and purity, have sat down on his godly throne as his seat of awakening. But again, due to his kindness for others, the sutra says, in order to satisfy the intellect of those who lacked dedication, the bodhisattva picked up the bundle of grass, went to the Bodhi tree, and circumambulated it 7 times, then laid down the grass in a perfect arrangement and sat down. Right? So he didn't really have to do this. He demonstrated this for ordinary beings. And then he made the firm resolution, on this seat, may my body may wither and rot, and my skin, my bones, and my flesh may dissolve. Yet until I attain awakening, so hard to find even through many eons, I will not move my body from his seat. So at the seat of awakening, the bodhisattvas in the 10 directions came and honored him through many different manifestations. They're all very beautifully described. Mara had been trying to conquer the bodhisattva all along without success. And now the bodhisattva decided that he needed to conquer Mara so that all the gods in the desire realm would be restrained, and in order to awaken the gods in Mara's retinue who had some goodness. So Mara has a terrible nightmare with 32 omens, where he loses all of his belongings, his health, and what's worse, some of his sons and some of the gods prostrate and receive teachings from the bodhisattva. So he's absolutely incensed. Calls up a huge, terrifying army. And what's interesting is that there's a very long conversation between his sons, some of whom supported Mara, and others had begun to feel devotion to the bodhisattva. So the demons began to hurl all sorts of terrifying weapons at the bodhisattva. They threw swords and arrows and darts and lances, and so forth. However, as soon as they released the weapons turned into garlands and canopies of flowers, and a cooling rain of flower petals fell on the ground. So finally, Mara said, "You have no witness to your acts of generosity, the grounds of your liberation." And the bodhisattva replied, "Evil one, the earth here is my witness." And then the sutra says, he embraced Mara, the evil one, and his demonic retinue with thoughts of love and compassion. And like a lion, he was without fear, fright, anxiety, timidity, disturbance, and perturbance. The earth supports all beings. She is impartial and unbiased towards all, whether moving or still. She is my witness that I speak no lies. So may she bear my witness. And then the beautiful earth goddess emerges from the earth and chastised Mara and praised the bodhisattva. So Mara still refused to give up. And so he sends his ravishingly seductive daughters to tempt the bodhisattva. But of course, they fail in their mission. And Mara said, well, so many ascetics have failed. So many holy men have failed, in their past. How can you succeed? You're just an ordinary man. And the bodhisattva responded that they failed because of their wrong views and the power of their negative emotions. So Mara, was absolutely furious. So he yelled at his army to attack the bodhisattva. And the sutra says, as he witnessed this army of demons, ugly with unnatural forms, this pure being understood that they were like an illusion. There is no Mara here, no army, no being, and also no self. Like the moon reflected in a pond, so does this threefold universe revolve. There is no I, no man, no woman, and no self. There is no ear, no nose, no tongue, and no body. No one created these phenomena, and no one experiences them. They arise in dependency and are empty, both from within and without. As he proclaimed the truth that phenomena are empty, the yakshas who are agreeable to discipline perceived the weapons in their hands to be flower garlands. Such was the result of the words spoken by the one who always speaks the truth. So finally, Mara leaves, and the Bodhisattva has some peace and quiet. And he's able to achieve the 4 meditative concentrations through which he gradually abandoned all desires, thoughts, and analysis, joy, pleasure, and pain. The 4th concentration one was one of perfectly pristine impartiality and mindfulness. So using that as a foundation, then he passes through 3 stages of the night, in which in the early stage, he actualized the knowledge that sees wisdom with divine eye. In the middle stage of the night, he developed the wisdom of recollecting past lives. And in the final stage, just at the break of dawn, he actualized the knowledge that brings suffering and its exhaustion to an end, and realized the insight that exhausts all defilements. So he realizes the 4 noble truths, as well as the 12 links of dependent origination in forward and reverse order. And in conclusion, a short excerpt, he became the king of physicians who would liberate beings from all suffering and establish them in the bliss of nirvana. He took his seat on a magnificent royal throne of the thus gone ones, the essence of the thus gone ones. He discovered the means to complete liberation and entered the city of omniscience, where he mingled perfectly with all Buddhas and became inseparable from the comprehension of the realm of phenomena. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anila. So now I'm going to pass this discussion to Bande Kamalashiri. Please lead us the discussion.
Thank you so much. The presentations. I didn't see any questions in chat. Are there any questions from audience?
Good evening, everybody. I have a question. And
Yes.
I'd like to know if the 4 concentrations and the 4 jhanas, are they the same thing?
It is better, Bante Sila, give answer to that.
Say it again, please.
You had mentioned the 4 jhanas and
4 concentrations.
the 4 concentrations that Ani Tundral just said. Are they the same things? The 4 concentrations and the 4 jhanas, are they the same thing?
There are 2 different kinds of jhanas, form jhana and formless jhana. 4 form jhanas are 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th jhana. 4 formless jhanas are Akasanan Chayatana, Vinyanan Chayatana, Neosanya Nasanyayatana, Akincanyayatana, Neosanya Nasanyayatana. That means the Akasanan Chayatana, infinite space, Vinyanan Chayatana, the state of consciousness, Akincanyayatana is the non-returners stage of the mind. Nevasanya Nasanyayatana is the neither perception nor non-perception state. These 2 are the ones they had been traditionally achieving in the ascetic tradition in India at the time. These are the 2 different kinds of concentrations achieved through the concentration of mind.
Now,
Yes.
are they specific meditations? Is that what they are? I'm not familiar with the term jhanas.
Not
that
the specific meditation. These are the stages of the development of mind anybody can achieve through the meditation.
Thank you.
The Buddha concentrated on the form jhanas and directed his mind to towards the enlightenment.
I see. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bante, for the answer. Then I also like to add a little bit. The four jhana means it is practice of samadhi or tranquility. And for concentrate is practice of sati or mindfulness. That is the easy way to understand what is the difference between these two kind of meditation practice. Yes, then if there is any other questions? If anyone, until if anyone asks question, I have question for you, both of you. The one is in Sanskrit literature also mentioned about the four kind of sight. So then Satara, we say that Satara Peranimiti in Sinhala for sights. In Pali text, also Sanskrit texts, especially Buddha Charita and Buddha Ghosha, but it is not in original sutras in life of the Gautama Buddha, but it is in the life of the Kashyapa Buddha. But normally both tradition, the Mahayana and Vajrayana tradition and Theravada tradition, all of the traditions, they accept the Siddhartha Gautama also, so the four sights. But both of you also not mentioned about that today. I think both of you was according to the early sutras. That is my first question. The second question actually is for the Anila. It is not in Theravada tradition, but any books or any source in Mahayana tradition, there must be interesting thing. Before Buddha made the Alara Kalam, he made female ascetic, two of them, the Sakya Brahmani and Padma. It is mentioned in the most venerable Ananda Maitreya's biography of Buddha. I think he have taken this information from any kind of Sanskrit tradition. Then from where it got, or what is the source for that? Is that story, because it is very important in modern days. Before the all of the male teachers, Siddhartha met the female two ascetics.
Oh, I didn't know that. I defer to Geshe Dage. I have no
Because
idea.
of the
Fascinating.
confidently he mentioned about the two names, the Sakya Brahmani and Padma.
Well, no, I don't know.
It is like after his 6-year meditation or before?
No, just
It was
early,
before.
just
Way
after
before.
renunciation.
Just after
Before
renunciation?
Kalam.
I did not hear that in the Mahayana tradition. It might be have some, I don't, because I don't read all book, right?
Mhm.
So after Buddha, the renunciations, then he just we saying he did like a meditation by himself until he saw the Sugata and that who offered him milk, right? So otherwise, just we saying did himself by himself. They are nothing mentioning he met someone.
There is meaning about the Alara Kalam also.
Alalakalam, actually, we use the Tibetan terms. I don't know the Sanskrit, the Pali. The Alalakalam's not really familiar with it.
Well, in this particular sutra, he's mentioned those two teachers are, but not the female teachers. But I don't know, maybe that's specific to this one sutra.
The
They
teachers
mentioned
exactly
Radha.
same with the Bande Shilaratna mentioned it. We are
Okay.
same, right?
Okay,
The two
Yeah.
teacher, but those are not female.
right. I
Yes,
didn't see any other mention.
Yeah,
in the
it
sutra.
is okay. We can agree to that. Yes. The
Well, it's
three
very
of them
interesting.
are males, but there is another two before them.
Hmm,
Yeah.
I'll go back and look.
Yes.
We don't know. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. But it must come. It is not in any Theravada text. We know that.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
But unfortunately, in the book, the author also not mentioned what is the source.
Huh. And which book was it where you saw the reference?
It is the
The life story of the Buddha.
Okay.
I have a question, Venerable Kamalasi.
yes. Is it for me or the speakers?
Well, it's for the Geshe-la, or the Tibetan Losang Tendril. The original question of Laura was about, she wanted to know if the four concentrations that was mentioned by Losang Tendril was the same as the four jhanas. Now, the answer wasn't specifically answered, so I wanted to ask Losang Tendril what she meant by the four concentrations. When she mentioned that in her talk, that the Buddha did the four concentrations, so that we know if it is similar to what she meant by what we think is the jhana.
So the sutra uses that specific terminology. It just says meditative concentration, but I could give you a little more of a description of each of those four, if that would help, since I'm not very conversant about this. But so the first meditative concentration, it says, is one in which it's free from desires, free of the factors connected with evil deeds and non-virtues. It's still accompanied by thought and analysis, and it's imbued with joy and pleasure born of discernment. And the second one,
First jhana, then okay, then it's the same as the jhanas.
okay, great, good.
I just wanted to clarify that because there seemed to be some confusion and the answer hadn't been answered specifically.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank
I thought they were the same things. I just wasn't 100% sure. Thank you for clarifying that.
Appreciate it. Good question.
If there is any other questions from anyone?
If there is not any other question yet, I like to know from Bhante Silaratana. Venerable Anila mentioned about Mara, the evil ones, defeat of evil one. How is it explained in Theravada tradition, Bhante Silaratana?
Well, question was not clear, Bante. I think my voice is something very blurry.
I think Bhante Dhammaloka also have technical trouble, but he asking about what is the explanation about Mara in Theravada tradition.
Oh, that it is the different. There is different kinds of descriptions about the Mara. Is as
I think he asking about the Devaputta Mara.
Oh, I'm sorry that I couldn't. I didn't go that far because of the I don't have any text in my hand that with me, and I did not study about that area.
Bhante Sutadhara, do you have any?
Wait, is there more than one Mara? Am I misunderstanding?
Yes, Mara means it is kind of the heavenly realm. Then the uncountable Maras are there, but the leader of that
Oh, okay.
there is a one mentioned one Mara. That is the we normally we call the Mara means the one person,
Mm-mm.
but he's not alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also in Theravada tradition, we talk about 5 kinds of Maras. And Devaputta Mara, which Venerable Anila mentioned, that's the evil one person. Yeah, I think if Venerable Sudhara knows anything from Theravada texts, how it's mentioned comparing to Venerable Anila's expression.
Yeah, this, I mean, the particular sutra that I read from just, mentioned the one main Mara, but mentioned that he had, countless sons.
Well, there is that in one as I remember, the Mahapadana Sutta or the Pabbajja Sutta, either of those. It has, there are 10 battalions of Mara. That there was 10 battalions of Mara, give the names to the battalions, and then when you just get the meaning of those names, those are just the not really the real persons. Those are just the emotions or the kleshas that or the defilements that came into the mind of the meditating Buddha. So that is one reference that we have with regard to the Mara during the time of the enlightenment of the Buddha. So that's but in our commentarial literature, it is mainly mentioned as the Devaputta Mara, that is the Mara who is the head of that one of the celestial worlds, which is one of those enjoying sensual pleasures. That's Paranimita Vasavatti, the one really that the divine abode was taken over by the Mara, the evil one. That those two are found in the Buddhist tradition, but also when you go into the Sri Lankan temple paintings, those in Buddha halls, the story of the Buddha is painted that always it is depicted as really the divine beings who are the battalions of the divine Mara, so the evil one. So that's that is more the way to depict maybe those defiled states of mind then it's more like a personification of those defilements that came into the mind of the meditating Prince Siddhartha.
Okay, then maybe we have only 8 minutes left over. So I'd like to ask the brief question to the part of the Theravada side. So how much important or how much valued that Buddha 6 year meditate without any the gross food? So that's from Theravada side, how many value it and how much think it's important, that kind of meditation. Bande Shila Ratna, did you hear that?
No,
So,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
my question for you is, so does Buddha did 6 year meditate without any gross food, right? But from Theravada side, how much value it and how much important of these activities doing Buddha 6 year meditations?
Within that 6 year period of time?
Yeah, he did like 6 year meditate, right? Yeah.
Actually, the meditation means that it had taken maybe 6 years for his investigation.
Then we have a little bit different. Well, what is talking is we continue Buddha on under the one tree, continues 6 years he meditate without any gross level food. That's what we're saying it. But so okay, anyhow, so time limited as we are not really talk. We also talk like 5 different type of like 4 different type of mass. So we can talk mentioning in the other time. So now Bande Sudadhara, I'm going to invite Bande Sudadhara, please briefly to conclude our today's discussions. Very short.
Well, thank you thank you, Venerable Lamaji, that this well, today the topic there is no much very complete the controversial point with regard to the story of the Buddha, Buddha's life from the renunciation up to the enlightenment. That when Venerable the Lama Ji mentioned that the 6 years of this the Prince Siddhartha, so the ascetic Siddhartha's quest is in the Theravada tradition. It is the 6 years is not just the continuous meditation at one place. It is meeting the teachers and also going into the self-mortification, and then after some time that when he got that emaciated body, and then with no food, in reality he was having very little food, and his body became weaker and weaker, and finally he realized that by just giving this much of pain, this much of suffering to the body, it is not that the Buddha, it is not leading him to anywhere other than death. So that slowly, with that understanding, then when he started taking food, and then slowly he regained his strength, and then later he went into the moderate lifestyle, and then his next part is that when we look at the Saccaka Sutta, that we find that he after all these meditations, then he found, he recollected that when he was as a young boy, he meditated under a tree, just by his by the fields of his father. That actually meditation he remembered, and then he started developing that. That is mainly the leading to these 4 jhanas. And then also according to the early question that the 4 establishments of mindfulness and 4 jhanas are different, but in this the discourse we find that the 4 establishment of mindfulness is before the 4 jhanas. Then the whole these 2 presenters, there is no major contradiction, major disagreement in this story. We don't find that many different stories, just similar stories, but with a little bit of like certain different explanations. So that with that just few notes, I just like to conclude and thank both the speakers for giving this, taking their time to give this presentation to enhance our understanding about these 2 traditions, how each tradition recorded the story of the Buddha. Thank you very much, and may this the presentations be an encouragement of for all of us to practice the Buddha's path. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before ending, I'd like to say thank you for all speaker and participator. And then now I'd like to invite Venerable Nagakaki for our final dedication.
Okay, sure. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry I missed it this time. And I just curious, I just wanted to have, I mean, when I came in, you just mentioned about the swastika. Is that the name of the person? Swastika is the same as swastika? That sounds like a swastika to me.
Yes.
Oh, the grass seller.
The name of the person.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so the swastika is the swastika, the same. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to have the quotes. If you don't mind, send me the quotes. I've never really have a name of that particular in a Japanese one, so I just wanted to have a little request.
Okay. Okay.
Because yeah, so it's actually nice to know.
We can see in Indian tradition they use so many symbols, name also as a personal names.
Oh, yeah.
So many chakras are there.
I know. So that's a disciple of the Buddha, or is that the regular person, I guess?
A regular person.
A regular person named Swastika. Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much anyway. So that was my concern that I just have. So, but thank you. And so I just wanted to, with the, so yeah, Japanese chanting or the dedication of the merits. So we will transfer the merit, whatever the thing that we receive, we share with all the other beings. So that's the chant that I would like to do. So please join me in meditation or silent meditation.願わくはこの功徳をもって平等に一切に施し、同じく菩提心を起こして安楽国に往生せん。ナムキエ仏、ナムキエ法、ナムキエソ。May this merit be shared with all beings equally. may we together awaken the body mind and attain the birth in the Pure Land, or land of peace and happiness. Namo Amida. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. So have a wonderful night and have a wonderful day. So yeah, Pandit.
That's right. Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our meeting is
Yeah.
going to be on May 2nd of May.
Hmm?
Our next meeting,
Oh,
Monday of May, that is May
May.
2nd.
oh,
Yeah.
great, great.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
again. Thank you. Good night.